Our notes today are on coordinate plane, so let's draw out what that actually is. So a coordinate plane has a vertical axis that's called the y-axis, and it has a horizontal axis called the x-axis. And where those two lines, those two axes intersect, that is called the point of origin, which has an ordered pair of 0, 0. So that means that you have 4 different sections that the coordinate plane is divided into, and those sections are called quadrants because there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. Quadrant 1 is the top right, quadrant 2 is the top left, quadrant 3 is the bottom left, quadrant 4 is the bottom right. So it goes in a counterclockwise direction when you name them. Any point that falls in quadrant 1 has an x value that is positive and a y value that's positive. Any point that falls in quadrant 2 has an x value that is negative and a y value that is positive. Any point that falls in quadrant 3 has an x value and y value to be negative. And any point that falls in quadrant 4 has an x value to be positive and a y value to be negative. Know that also points could fall on the axes. So there could be points that fall on the y-axis, and that would mean the x value of that point is 0. And when any point falls on the x-axis, that means that the y value of that point is 0. Our first set of section in our notes wants us to be able to explain in words how to plot each point. To be able to do this, we have to understand what an ordered pair is. It is a pair of x and y values. And to be able to explain in words how to plot them, we look at which direction we need to go for the x value and the y value in order to plot it. So when x is positive, we would say move to the right. When x is negative, you'll say move to the left. When y is positive, you'll say go up. When y is negative, you'll say go down. And then, of course, when x is 0, you'll say up, 0, stay. Or when y is 0, you'll just say up or down 0 or just stay. So for number 1, since the x value is 0, you say left or right 0. Since the y value is 0, that's up or down 0. So that's actually at the origin, so you really don't move any to plot that point. For number 3, you always start at the origin to plot any point. Since the x value is positive, that means you go to the right 4. Since the y value is positive, you go up 4. For number 5, you'll go left 4 because the x value is negative and up 3 because the y value is positive. For number 7, you'll go left 5 because the x value is negative and down 4 because the y value is negative. For number 9, you'll go right 1 because the x value is positive and down 2 because the y value is negative. For number 11, you'll go right 3 because the x value is positive and up or down 0. So you don't move up or down any because the y value is 0. For number 13, you'll go left 4 because the x value is negative and up or down 0 because the y value is 0. So you don't move any for the y value. For number 15, you'll go left or right 0, so you don't move any for the x, and you'll go up 3 for the y because it's positive. And for number 17, you'll go left or right 0 and down 3. The x value is 0, so you don't move any for that one. The y value is negative, so that's why we go down. You go ahead and try even numbers 2 through 18 and let me know if you have any questions before moving on to the next section. Now that you're able to describe how to plot a point, let's actually follow those directions to actually plot and label points on the graph. So again, we can use the labeling on the ends of the coordinate plane to help us know which way to go. Just know that you always start at 0, 0, the origin. You're either going to go right or left for the x value, up or down for the y value, and you always have to go along the x first because that's the first number you see. So to plot A, you start at the origin. Since x value is 0, you don't move left or right any. Since the y value is positive 2, you go up 2 and you make a point. And we label that point A. For B, negative 4, 4, you start at the origin, you go to the left 4 and up 4, and you make a point. And you label that point B. For C, 4, 4, you start at the origin, you go to the right 4 and up 4, and you make a point. And you label that point C. For point D, 4, negative 4, start at the origin, you go to the left 4, you go to the right 4 because it's positive 4, and you go down 3 and you make a point. And you label that point D. For points E, positive 3, negative 5, you go start at the origin, you go to the right 3 and then down 5, and you plot that point. And you label that point E. For number 21, you do the same thing. We have the plot points R, S, T, U, and V. Starting with R, you go to the right 2 and up 5, make a point. For S, you go to the left 1 and down 5, make a point. For point T, you go to the right 5 and down 2 and make a point. For point U, you go to the left 5 and up 2 and make a point. And for point V, you go to the left 3 and up 1 and make a point. So again, go ahead and try the even numbers 20 and 22 and let me know if you have any questions before you move on to the next section. And make sure that you complete all of the even numbers and turn in your paper at the end of today's class. In this next section, we're going to state the quadrant or axis that each point lies on without having to graph it. Because again, from the beginning of our notes, we know our coordinate plane is divided into 4 sections, quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4, and we know that some points can fall on the y-axis, some point can follow the x-axis. So we could just look at the ordered pairs and determine where it falls by looking at the number and the values. So for quadrant 1, both of them will be positive. Quadrant 2, the x value is negative, the y value is positive. Quadrant 3, both of them are negative. And quadrant 4, the x value is positive and the y value is negative. And then if it falls on the y-axis, the x value would be 0. If it falls on the x-axis, the y value is 0. So number 23 would fall, point negative 5, 2 would fall in quadrant 2 because the x value is negative and the y value is positive. On number 25, the point negative 2, negative 5 would fall in quadrant 3 because the x value is negative and the y value is negative. For problem number 27, 4, 2 would fall in quadrant 1 because both x and y values are positive. Number 29, negative 4, 1 would fall in quadrant 2 because the x value is negative and the y value is positive. Number 31, 0, 3 would fall on the y-axis because the x value is 0. Also, number 33 would fall on the y-axis because the x value is 0. Both 35 and 37 would fall on the x-axis because the y values are 0. And number 39, 3, negative 4 would fall in quadrant 4 because the x value is positive and the y value is 0. So again, go ahead and try the even numbers and press pause or let me know if you have any questions before moving on to the next section. The last thing we need to be able to do for these set of notes is to state the coordinates of a point that is plotted on the graph. So we're going to go to each of these points and we're going to identify the x value of that point and the y value of that point. So let's start with point F. If I go to the x-axis, it lines up at -1, so the x value is -1. If I go to the y-axis, the value lines up at +1, so the y value is +1. So the ordered pair for F is -1, +1. If I go to point G, it lines up at +4 on the x and -1 on the y value. So the ordered pair for G is 4, -1. If I go to H, it lines up at 5 on the x and -2 on the y. So the ordered pair for H is +5, -2. If I go to I, it lines up at -1 on the x and +5 on the y. So the coordinates for I is -1, 5. If I go to J, it lines up at -2 on the x and -2 on the y. So the ordered pair for J is -2, -2. And we're going to go ahead and go to problem number 43, and then you'll have the rest of the class time to finish any of the even numbers that you did not finish. Starting with I, it lines up at -5 on the x and -5 on the y. So the ordered pair is -5, -5. For point J, it lines up at positive 1 on the X and positive 3 on the Y. So its ordered pair is 1, 3. For point K, it lines up at positive 4 on the X and negative 1 on the Y. So its ordered pair is positive 4, negative 1. For point L, it lines up at negative 2 on the X and 0 for the Y. So its ordered pair is negative 2, 0. And point M, it lines up at positive 5 on the X and 0 for the Y. So its ordered pair is 5, 0. So again, make sure that you have gone through the whole video, and if you need to replay it, you're able to.